All right, thank you very much. At this time, I would like former Mayor Undergo to come up to the front for recognition. Yeah. Pardon? Oh. Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you so much, Tim, for your last 12 months serving as our mayor. And our town motto is a small town is like a big family. And last year was certainly a very complex year, which was, faced with some challenges, and we had some times where we had insights and finding it, and I think there's a lot of hope. And so I just wanted to say thank you for running effective and very professional meetings during the last year. Also want to say how wonderful a job you're doing on representing Loomis on a regional level. And I know that you sit on the CITICOG board, and just how wonderful work that you're doing on behalf of the town of Loomis. And the work that you're doing is so important because we're a small town, but we need a big voice, and the relationships that you're building are extremely important. Thank you very much. I know that you are a huge proponent for our businesses, and thank you so much for the work that you do with the ribbon cuttings and all the events that you have attended, and all of the entrepreneurs that you help to perhaps come and have a project here. And I know you're going to continue to do that, so thank you very much. Also, your work with our youth and the leadership that you've gone around to the schools, and you're hoping to instill that leadership in the children. And even today, you brought kids to Loomis, to our town hall, and it was great to hear their voices and laughter and questions, and hopefully instilling some civics into their life, and saying, someday I might want to grow up and be a mayor just like you. And so I think that was really wonderful. I also want to thank your family, because I know that the time away from them has probably taken a little bit of a toll. And thank your wife, Janelle, and your 3 delightful children, Noah, Logan, and Vivian. And thank them for letting us borrow their dad while you worked for our hometown. Thank you so much. And on behalf of the town of Loomis, I want to present you with this gavel that you can put on your wall. And remember your year as mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jan.
Thank you.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm still here for another year. Love it or not. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay.
All right. Okay. Now is a time for us to discuss matters of interest to council members. Is there any matters of interest to the council members tonight? No?
Just have one. We spoke about it over the last couple of months. Basically, our emergency preparedness plan, kind of the things that we have going on here. I'm really interested. I know we've been working with the county, but I'd like to see something come back in the next couple of months as we start to articulate that. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to thank everyone in the community who came by for the Christmas tree lighting last night. It's a fantastic tradition, and even though it rained on Saturday and we had to reschedule, it was an impressive showing of people. And thank you for all the people who helped organize it, all the cookies and service clubs and hot chocolate that showed up. It was a fantastic event. So thank you to anyone in the audience that attended, and we hope that that tradition carries on for many more years. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Sean, Town Manager report.
Yeah, I just got a couple real quick things. On Costco, we recall the recirculated draft environmental impact report that was originally posted to the town website, but because of a publication error, we pulled that back. The new revised recirculated EIR will be out on the street on December 20th. And we're going to do a 50 52-day comment period because of the Christmas holiday, so we're adding an extra weekend for that. So that'll be out on December 20th. The town received a $20,000 grant from SACOG for Rural Main Street Planning Grant, and that's going to bring back Michelle Reeves, who did a presentation workshop with our local business community back, I think it was 2018, January 2018, I think. She'll be here. Institute of Local Government will be here, and then another consultant that specializes in land use planning issues for small rural towns, and looking at like the downtown corridor and how to kind of help continue the revitalization that we're doing on that, and work on kind of a workshop format for that. I'm not exactly sure what the scope of work will end up being, but that's a great opportunity for us, especially just to get Michelle Reeves to come back out again. So on WW Molding, want to give an update on that. Escrow was set to close on December 15th. We're extending that for an additional 30 days to make sure that we get everything buttoned up on the planning side. Project's going to the Planning Commission at their January meeting. And we will be receiving a letter from the state, from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, saying that there's no further action needed on the contamination side. So all the contamination's been cleaned up, taken care of. If you live anywhere nearby there, you might be getting a letter. It's a fact sheet from the regional board saying that I think it's a 30 or 45-day comment period on the final no action required. But it's basically a fact sheet talking about that. And then the last one that I got, and Jenny will probably chime in on this after I do, but December 17th is actually the town's 35th anniversary of becoming incorporated. And so we're looking at doing some kind of just a real small little reception on that day, I think in the afternoon, with some cookies that Jenny is going to not make herself, but buy for us, that'll have the town seal or the town logo or something on there. So I'll let Jenny talk about that when it comes up to her. And that's it. Oh, the town manager Tuesday for December is not going to happen because it's Christmas Eve. So, and as much as I would like to be here, my family would kill me if I wasn't there eating tamales with them. So that's it for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sean. Does anybody have anything to say to Sean? Okay. Nope. Good job to Mary Beth and getting that grant. That's excellent. All right, now we'll move on to the agenda. Chamber of Commerce update. Sorry, Jenny, I almost skipped right by you.
Jenny Nisley, 4135 Hunter's Drive. Good evening, Mayor Clark Kretz and Council. I'm just wanted to say that this year the Chamber did turn 60 years old, and so it's been 60 years that we've been working with our businesses, and we're always looking at ways to connect and communicate what's happening in town and with our business environment and with our community. And we do have a lot of... All right. I don't usually have to talk. All right. So also, I wanted to say that we also have a lot of people that stop in, visitors that stop in the chamber, and we're able to promote the businesses in the town that way. So it's been a very busy month, and our Loomis Young Professionals hosted their very first official pub crawl. We had about 25 different people who went to 3 different businesses within 3 different hours, and it was kind of a real fun downtown, made a unique situation downtown. So it was kind of fun to see us all walk around. We've had very positive feedback with our leadership class. And the participants are giving us lots of great feedback. And our third session, we have presenters from Sierra College and the superintendent of Loomis School and the principal of Del Oro. And our fourth session is going to be on local governments. So really excited, and it happens to be on the day that's our December 17th, which is our anniversary of our incorporation. And then we had town talks, and Ramona and I talked about economic development and ag tourism and the possibilities such as farm stays and encouraging sell on the farm experiences and how that can bring people to town. Some of the things, one of the things we asked them is if you had a magic wand for downtown, what would you do? And some of the answers were clean up along the town entrances, co-op space was mentioned twice, a hotel on what was called the Turtle Island property 4 times, including horse trails and a place to park horse trailers. Hardware store was mentioned twice, a community youth center, a shoe store, a live theater, a do-it-yourself business, and to hire an economic director, that was mentioned twice. So it was pretty good talks. The town manager, Sean, myself, and Josh, our newest ambassador, went in downtown and started finishing up our business walk. We had a ribbon cutting for the Loomis Basin Gastropub, which is now open 7 days a week from 6 to 12 with coffee, scones, breakfast burritos, salads, and sandwiches. We ended with the Loomis Christmas tree light last night. And our ballots for our nominations for 2019 Business Excellent Awards are out, and we look forward to celebrating in January.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, we're going to move on to our agenda. Is there public comment for? Okay. Public comment for? Okay.
For items not on the agenda. Jean Wilson, 4301 Barton Road. I noticed in yesterday's Sacramento Bee, what's left of it, that Placer County has suspended its fees for backup power generators. Their fee, I think, was $283 for the permit and inspection. And it looks like this was so that they would rather waive the fee than have people just put it in without any inspection so that you don't know how safe it is. And it looks like from the article, Lincoln has done the same thing. I don't know if this is of sufficient interest in the town of Loomis. We have had the power outages, and I'm sure some people do and want backup generators. I know that our fees are based on what our costs are, so to waive the fee is not just makes the cost go away. The cost is still there to the town. But I thought it might be something worth looking into just to see if it's something that we might want to, if not suspend or waive, maybe reduce the fee or give some incentive that people, if they're going to put in a backup generator, this is not just a portable thing that you plug in, but people are hooking it up to their home electricity grid just so that they can have refrigerators or medical kinds of things or some kind of backup heat. Anyway, I'll turn in the article, but I thought it might be something to be at least looked into, whether Loomis might need to do something. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
Jesse Lunsford, 6133 Smoker Court in Loomis. Good evening. 2 things for the town manager report. Last time we were promised an update within a couple of weeks with the county as far as the purchase of the library, where that was headed. And also, when it comes to WW Molding, no numbers on what the purchase price was, what the agreement is, and if those funds are heading for the general fund, affordable housing, traffic, wherever those funds are heading. That would be a nice discussion of where those things are headed.
That was all in the agenda item when the town sold the property. So the purchase price, contract, all that was in the actual agenda item.
And is the money heading for the general fund?
Goes to the general fund.
Okay. It might be a nice discussion, since it's kind of extra, instead of heading to the general fund, maybe toward a special project in town that may be needed. We've got things that are unfunded, the bathrooms over at Sunrise Park.
Those aren't unfunded, they're actually funded.
I'm sorry, last time I saw it was unfunded, it was up to $200,000 for the bathroom.
We have park money that we can use that for. The way that town finances work is if it's money that comes in that's not used for a specific purpose, it goes into the general fund, and then at the budgetary year, when we do the budget, it gets allocated out to those projects.
Okay.
So what you're talking about, I mean, the money right now goes into the general fund. We don't get that money back, though, until the end of the note. So it's a 5-year note. 4.25% interest. Council approved the terms of that deal. It's all in the packet that was approved, I think, in September, October. It's on the website.
Okay.
But the packet itself, the actual contract is all in there.
Okay.
I can sit down and talk to you about that.
No,
if
no,
you
I
want.
can take a look at it. If it's out there on the website, I
Right.
can search around for at least a couple hours to find it.
Yeah. And the library, we're intending to, hopefully going to be meeting with the county after the first of the year.
Okay, so now it's been pushed back further.
Right.
Okay. It's just one of those things. I know that there was a lady here last time who keeps updating us on the library, Friends of the Library, and it's kind of like it's one of those things that keeps dragging on and on about where we stand with the county as far as are they even interested?
Well, and I can't speak for them because I haven't met with them yet.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to meet with them.
All
It'll
right.
end up being after the first of the year.
All right, thank you much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesse.
William Quinn, oh, is there any way to turn this up? Nobody can hear back here. It's there's no control.
There you
Oh,
go.
wait.
It's voice activated.
It's voice activated. Better. William Quinville, 6280 Horseshoe Bar Road. I'd like to talk again on the traffic and speed on King and Horseshoe Bar, since I'm a Horseshoe Bar. On the 29th at about 11:30 p.m., we had a young lady who lost control of her car, spun around about 4 times, and ended up facing the wrong way on the opposite side of the road down by the creek. This is becoming more and more of a problem, and if you've ever lived next to a freeway, which I used to live next to, now I think I live next to a freeway again. I don't know how to slow down the traffic, and I don't know how to curb the amount of cars that are using Horseshoe Bar that are coming from outside of Loomis. I mean, the county is not looking at the impact they're having on our roads. So if anyone here has a brilliant idea how to slow them down, I never have seen anyone actually pulled over. I thought we had a traffic officer, but he could get writer's cramp or a workman's comp injury writing tickets on Horseshoe Bar. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Any more public comment?
Pam Blake, Angelo Drive. I just want to make a comment that now I am officially with Linda Hart Pet Assisted Therapy, and we're at the Loomis Library Community Center over here every 4th Saturday of the month, starting at 10:30, except for this month, because I believe you guys are going to close it down that week. So the people that are here or watching at home, the 4th Saturday of every month, bring your kids. You can read to the dogs. I've been there twice without my dog, but now I'm certified, so now I can bring her with me now. So I just wanted to let you guys know. So the dogs really enjoy it.
Thank you, Pam. All right. Any more public comment? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to adopting the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, opportunity to comment on consent calendar. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered by the council to be routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Okay.
I'll make a motion to move approval of items 1 through 10 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we'll go to business. Okay. All right, we have item number 11, countywide transportation sales tax, and Mike Lucan.
Good evening, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council, or the Town Council of Loomis. Thank you for having me back here this evening. Again, Mike Lucan, Executive Director of Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. I'm also joined here tonight by Aaron Hoyt, who is a senior planner with our agency, who has been working on some things in the town of Loomis regarding our funding outreach strategy. Another member of our staff that's also working on this in regards to the town of Loomis is Kathleen Hanley, who's been working with Jenny Nisley on items related to the Chamber of Commerce, including things like the Eggplant Festival and other events that we've been participating in the community here. So I was here before you a few months ago and gave you a presentation, kind of an overview of the entire outreach strategy for a transportation funding measure. And at that meeting and after that meeting, you asked me to possibly come back again and speak specifically on items that are relative to the town of Loomis in our proposed draft expenditure plan, and how this thing would really affect Loomis in particular. We touched on some of those items, but I wanted to come back tonight and give you our rendition of things that are in there for Loomis, or that Loomis is eligible for, or that will affect Loomis, and then answer any questions that you might have about those items. I'm going to do a little bit of an overview from last time to kind of just explain why we're here, and or why we're doing the funding outreach strategy. And there are actually two handouts that I gave you on your dais. One is a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, which I'm going to be going through, and one is a one-page handout of our actual draft expenditure plan that was approved back, our draft expenditure plan that was approved by our board back in March of 2019. If I brought a few extra copies for the audience. However, if you're not able to get one of those tonight, you can see either myself or Aaron after the meeting. We can get your email address, and we certainly can email you a copy of those materials. I guess I also should apologize in advance. You notice my voice isn't real great. I'm getting over a case of bronchitis, so I actually have a few cough drops in here and a bottle of water, so I may have to pause a little bit. My apologies for that. I'm about 80% better. Anyway, why we're doing the funding strategy is because over the years we worked very hard to plan South Placer County and the county in general in terms of land use and transportation. About 25 years ago, we created Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, and we did that because we didn't want to have, we as Placer County residents, and I've lived in Placer almost more than I've lived anywhere else, about 30 years now. We decided that it was, we wanted to have control of our destiny when it came to transportation. So we didn't want another organization, which was mentioned earlier in Councilman Underko's the things that he participates in, and a very good organization, Sacramento Area Council of Governments. We didn't want folks in other parts of the region telling us how to spend our money and what our priorities were in terms of transportation. We coordinate very closely with them, but we wanted to say where our money goes. And so we worked really, really hard over the last 40 or 50 years to come up with a viable means to fund our to design and fund our transportation system. And we did that under the premise of a funding formula, which you have up on the screen here today, where, especially with our regional highways, the federal government and state government, they own those things, they maintain those things, and dating back all the way to the Eisenhower administration when the interstate highway system was created, they agreed to fund 90% of the cost of that, and we as local agencies who affect that system were to come up with a 10% match. And over the years, as the United States and as the state increased in size and population, that eroded back to 20%, and then we had to come up with 30%. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, things significantly changed. And we are at a point where, for most regional projects, when we go out and we say, okay, federal government, we need money to expand this interchange or to expand this highway, we have to come up with half the money. They'll come up with half, and we have to come up with half. Well, that presents us a problem, and that problem is that it creates a gap in funding. So we have taxed and required developers to pay traffic impact fees to the maximum extent allowable by law. And in some cases, with things like Placer Parkway, which I won't touch upon too much tonight, the development community, the builders, have gone above and beyond and said we would pay for that above what we normally have. So if you take the need, which I'll skip over here, is about $3 billion in improvements that we need for traffic congestion in South Placer County. If you take away the development impacts fees that are paid for transportation in all of our cities and our regional impact fees for transportation, you still have a gap. You have this gap created because the formula changed of about $1.25 billion, where 20 years ago that gap wasn't there. And certainly other things affect that too, such as the cost of actually constructing these things costs more. And I'm going to back up one slide here and mention a thing I also discussed back a couple months ago, and that is SB1. Everybody asks, well, what about SB1? Didn't we just pass the gas tax, and doesn't that pay for it? Yes and no. It pays for maintenance. It pays for fix it first. So it pays for repairing our buses and our transit systems. It pays for our traffic signals and roundabouts and other technology. It pays mostly for maintaining our roads. That's where almost entirely that goes. And it pays for some pedestrian safety and other bike and pedestrian projects. But what it doesn't pay for is any expansion of our roadway system. It doesn't pay for the interchange. It doesn't pay for the widening. It wouldn't pay for the Horseshoe Bar interchange. Horseshoe Bar interchange. It wouldn't pay for Placer Parkway. So we have a problem. So we have a number of major projects that are really needed for improvement in our county. We designed our transportation system about 40 or 50 years ago. We went out with Caltrans and purchased right-of-way for all of our highways, so we have sufficient room for capacity of expanding our roadways. So we have these 5 major projects. We need to improve the interchange. We just got done with the first phase of that. We have 4 phases to go. We need to widen Highway 65, we need to widen I-80, and we need to create Placer Parkway, and there's actually another project on here too where we need to fund expansion of Baseline Road. And that's based upon the land use that we created here in Placer County over the years. And what happens if we don't do that? Well, we basically are at the whim of traffic congestion. You see some pictures up here on the slide here of things that happen during holiday periods, and certainly Loomis is greatly impacted by holiday periods where traffic utilizes Taylor Road and other roadways to get around. But this situation that we see during holiday periods, if we don't fix these roadways, we're going to see all the time. Traffic congestion in South Placer County and throughout the Sacramento region. The region is essentially going to double in size in the next, to about 2050. And if we don't improve our roadways, if we don't widen our roadways, if we don't build transit, if we don't build bike trails, if we don't build other transportation things to get people out of their cars, we are going to face some serious congestion. Again, about 5 years ago, our traffic rate was increasing. If you look at a graph, it was kind of on a gradual increase over time. We are now at what our traffic engineers call an inflection point. And the reason we're that, so instead of this, we're at this. So traffic level is increasing almost exponentially in Placer County and in the Sacramento region and throughout Northern California. And the reason for that is mainly because when we use these smartphone things, they tell us, well, they're going to take this shortcut because the traffic's bad on I-80 or traffic's bad on Sierra College Road. The shortcuts are full. There are no shortcuts anymore. And so traffic is going to increase this much unless we do something about it. So in our plan, we have the interchange. We finished phase 1, which is a very important project. It helped northbound traffic get through the interchange very well. It's worked very well to get people, off of Galleria Stanford Ranch. You can now get to Costco without the Roseville Costco without crossing 4 lanes of traffic and keep taking your life in your own hands. But we have 2 phases to go, 2 very big phases to go, and about another $400 million worth of work on that. We need to widen 65. Again, we purchased the right-of-way a long time ago to widen that highway, and we need to widen it essentially from Pleasant Grove all the way up to Lincoln. And then we have a couple what are called bottlenecks left on I-80. We've done a lot to I-80, but we have a couple more very important projects to go. The auxiliary lane, they're called auxiliary lanes, but they're connective lanes between off-ramps. So there's a very important one from Highway 65 to 80 Interchange to Rockland Road, where a lot of folks get off to access Sierra College. And we have another bottleneck down on I-80 westbound between Douglas and Riverside. And so we have those projects to the tune of about $30 million. So all told, we have, those are our top projects, if you will, our projects which affect the entire county and the whole Sacramento region. But we have a number of projects to the tune of about $1.2 billion that we need to find a funding source for. And I don't expect you to read this. This is actually in the handout that I gave you. And I'm going to cue in on various aspects of this. But this is our expenditure plan, and an expenditure plan is required when we're taking a look at a funding source such as sales tax. And we're looking at the feasibility of that now. We're not out there right now. We can't, as public agencies, say you should vote on a sales tax measure. I don't know, Jeff thanks me for saying that. But we can talk about the need for a sales tax measure, and we do. We have a real need for a funding source, and a sales tax is one way we could fund it. There are basically two ways in the state of California: either a sales tax measure for transportation, which requires 2/3 of the vote of the electorate, or you can do a parcel tax. And we looked at both. The problem with the parcel tax is the residents and property owners of Placer County have to foot the entire bill for all of the transportation improvements. And our board said, well, that's not really fair, because all these people that are coming from the Bay Area, all these people that are coming from Sacramento County to shop and work in our community, they create an impact too. And roughly about 30% of the sales tax revenue generated in Placer County comes from outside the county. So a much better measure for Placer County residents would be to look at a sales tax measure versus a parcel tax measure. And we polled on that and found out, yes, that's what residents want to do. So what are the items in this measure that affect Loomis directly? So we have a number of projects. The first one is the Horseshoe Bar Interchange. This is an interchange which during peak hour traffic, due to off-ramps and on-ramp sizes, is under capacity. It was designed a number of years ago, and it needs to be upgraded. This interchange is about in the $25 to $35 million category for fixing. We haven't gone out and done a detailed cost estimate, but that's about the range of cost. And in our transportation measure, we have what's called an interchange program, and we've dedicated $85 million to 3 interchanges: Rockland Road, Horseshoe Bar Interchange, and Nelson Lane up in Lincoln in there. So, and the way our expenditure plan works is we're not paying for the entire cost of these improvements. So you see a total cost. That's how much the total cost of those 3 projects are. Then you see a local match, and then you see what sales tax revenue would generate. So there's a local match required, or a grant that we would go out and get, and then there's what it would generate. So each one of these projects we're banking on getting grant funding for. So we're only going to fund about 50% of the project. Sometimes we have to do more, sometimes we can do a little less, depending on what the grant program is, but on average about half. Other projects. So the other very important category for Loomis and all the cities in South Placer County is what we call a local project fund. And what this does for communities is we have all these things identified for very specific projects, but it's very, your city engineer may talk a little bit more about this tonight, but you have a laundry list of projects that you have that are unfunded that are very important because your traffic system, your transportation system connects to this regional transportation system. So our board thought it very important to basically set aside 25% of the entire $1.25 billion for local projects, and we divided that by communities based upon 2 factors. One is population, which is how we distribute a number of our transportation dollars, not only here in Placer County, but throughout the state, and then on road miles. And so for the town of Loomis, there is about $9 million is set aside over a 30-year period, about $300,000 a year, that would be dedicated to Loomis for essentially your city engineer to apply towards projects in Loomis. $300,000 a year. And of late, and I have some pictures up here, of late, some of the things that we've been looking at, and actually Aaron has been working with Gordon Med at your school district on looking at some of the Safe Routes to Schools projects. That's a thing that's very important in all of our communities. And there's a real opportunity here to solve some specific issues where there is not a section of sidewalk, where there's a blockage of a pathway to Delaware High School or to Loomis Grammar School or your other elementary schools. There's a real opportunity to make an impact. Some of those are on Britt's list, but it's been brought to our attention by some of your town council members and by the school district that these are some of the things that we should look at and that we could apply these funds towards. Not saying this is the only thing you can apply those towards, but these are some of the kinds of projects, not only in Loomis, but in Roseville and in Rockland and in Lincoln that we can look at for funding. So, and projects that are very, very much needed for the safety of children in our communities. So those were the two things that are dedicated specifically to Loomis. So Horseshoe Bar Interchange, and and a local source of funding for your projects. Now there are other opportunities for Loomis. So one of the things that is very important for us, we can't just build roads. We have to do roads, we have to do transit, and we have to do bike ped. We have to do all those things to solve traffic congestion. And so one of the things that's very important in this community, and we utilize it significantly, is transit service when it comes to commuter transit service. And so we're going to put $32 million of our measure into transit service countywide, and Loomis will take advantage of that. There will be an expansion of the Placer Express, which stops at the park and ride lot right off Interstate 80 to get people to downtown Sacramento. About 60% of the people that live in Placer County actually commute to Sacramento for work now and probably continuing on in the future. So there'll be an expansion of that service. And it's really important because right now, if you take that service, it's completely full to the brim, to the extent that Will Garner, the director of Placer Transit, was telling me today that a lot of Loomis residents actually, they don't get on at the park and ride. They get on maybe up the hill a little bit because if they don't have a seat. They have to stand all the way to Sacramento. So we need to expand that service. Local service, yes, there's some work that we need to do with local transit service. But our commuter service is at capacity and we need to expand it. And Loomis can take advantage of this. And that's just a picture of our system there. So of that commuter bus service, total cost is $75 million. We have other sources of revenue of about $43 million. There's $32 million dedicated in the sales tax, proposed expenditure plan for a sales tax towards transit service, be it both capital for more buses, because these things, in order to add service, you have to actually add buses, and for the actual operations as well. The next thing is alternative modes. We have set aside in our expenditure plan $64 million countywide for alternative modes, and those are bike trails and pedestrian trails and other sidewalks and those types of things. And that is money that Loomis can apply for every year. And work with our staff, with Aaron. Aaron actually manages our alternative modes component in our work plan, and we'll have every year there'll be money available for projects in the community to do bike ped, and we'll have a call for projects, and Loomis can apply for those, just like any of the other communities. So in that plan, again, $139 million in proposed projects in the south part of the county. There are funding sources, grants, and other impact fees and that type of thing of about $75 million, and we have put aside $64 million for that particular project, for that particular program. And then we have what we call a competitive program, and you see I I stole a picture out of the Business Journal of the new high-hand marketplace that's being built. And not that that project needs this funding, but the message with this is there are projects that we can't anticipate today that are going to come along. And so we took a very, very small part of our expenditure program, and we set it aside, about 5%. We set aside to say, okay, there's going to be projects like the high-hand marketplace that'll come along in Loomis and in Roseville and Rockland that we don't know. And there may be a sidewalk we need. There may be a roadway improvement that we need in front of it. And if we don't fund that, that project's not going to get funded. And a project like High-Hand Marketplace, again, not that it needs it, but it may or may not. That project is a regional asset for Placer County. It's great for Loomis, but it's great for the entire county. And we could very easily see if the county saying, this is important for Loomis, this is important for the county. So all of the cities get together and say, we're gonna give Loomis this year X amount of money for this project to make that project happen. And if it doesn't, it might not happen. So again, that's available to Loomis. So again, we set aside about the total cost of these projects would be about $144 million. We have funding sources through impact fees and others of about $80 million, but we have set aside $64 million for that program. With that is the list of things that are specific to Loomis in our transportation measure. I wanted to just kind of come back tonight and highlight those and answer any questions that either Aaron or I might be able to answer for you on any of those items or any other things related to our outreach strategy. So we're in what. And it is an outreach strategy. So we're out talking to city councils, to community groups. I think I've spoken to every Rotary in the county at least 3 times now. And we're basically saying, do you want to do this? And then we poll. So we'll poll in January, and then we'll poll again in March. And based upon the results of that poll and us going out and talking to groups like yourselves or the Kiwanis or the Rotary or a citizens group or a political group or whoever wants to hear from us, our board will take all that input in January and again in March. They'll make that decision. Is this important enough for the county, the south part of the county? This is specifically for South County. Is it important enough to put it on the ballot? Yes or no? They may put it on. They may decide not to put it on. And if they do put it on the ballot, then we as a public agency have to step back. A private sector campaign would then take over, and they would have to work very hard to get a 2/3 majority. They still have to have 2/3 of the electorate vote for this in the contiguous cities in South Placer County, and that would happen in theory in November of 2020. So that's where we're at now. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have on this or anything else that I didn't bring up tonight related to transportation.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike?
No, yeah.
I have a few.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, Mike. A few questions for you and commentary. First of all, I think it's very important for the County of Placer to stay competitive in relation to other counties and areas throughout the state with where we are with our property tax, our sales tax that we would be asking voters to increase. Any idea where we rank in comparison to other regions? Are we, and then specifically where we rank in comparison to other regions with how much money we have in our sales tax dedicated to transportation?
Sure. So, and I'm sorry, I mentioned that last time I was here, but I didn't mention it tonight, is we are at a pretty severe competitive disadvantage. 26 other counties in California have created a transportation sales tax measure for themselves based upon their needs. So the amounts are all over the board. LA County is, of course, much, 100 times the size of our program. But what's happening is now when we go up against those counties for funding, for grant programs, I use the analogy with San Mateo because we seem to be up against them on occasion, and they have a transportation sales tax measure, and we go up there and we say, well, our developers, our builders have come up with 20% of the cost of the money, just like we used to, and San Mateo will say, well, we came up with 50% of the money, and they say, here, San Mateo, here's your money. We lose every single time. So it's not only that we don't have the money to do these projects, but we don't have the money to be competitive. So if you go out and you look at the rules for these grant programs, the rules still say 20% or 11.67%. But the problem is the competitiveness of these. We qualify, but coming in second place doesn't matter with these things. We have to win. And if we don't have the matching funds, the 50% most of the time now, we lose.
It's kind of hard to go to the state and the feds and say, hey, we've got a traffic problem, we'd really like to fix it. And they come to us and say, well, how much money are you putting into it? And we say, well, 10%. And they say, well, it doesn't sound like you guys are very serious about solving the problem. Tell me about new versus existing. So how much of the revenue would be dedicated to new projects versus existing projects, whereas we'd be using some of that money for maintenance and improvements to what we already have?
Sure. So SB1, I'll back up to this here. So the state of California took 12 years to decide to come up with a funding source for transportation. And what they did is they only came up with half of what was needed. They came up with what we need to fix first. And so they created a very significant source of revenue for fixing our roads. And Placer County gets about 20 in total, in all the jurisdictions and everything. We get about $20 million a year for that. But the problem is we have almost $1 billion in backlog and need. Okay. So it's going to take us a long time to get there. So I don't want to discount that. So this is very important that we have this money in place. But the problem is the legislature it took them 12 years just to agree upon maintaining our roads. They couldn't even get close to agreeing on how we expand our roadway. Even though the state is growing by leaps and bounds, they couldn't agree upon how to fund expansion of transportation. So our program is designed primarily for expansion. I would say 90-95% of it is designed for expansion. That local pot of money, you could use some of that to rehabilitate a roadway. There's a very important thing in California with transportation sales taxes, and is that you can't supplant funds. So if you have for years funded out of your general fund or a traffic impact fee, you funded road rehabilitation, you can't, it's not allowed by law, take that money and use it for something else and say, oh, well, we're going to use this new transportation sales tax dollars for that. You can't. It's not allowed in California. And so this is an expansion fund. Again, you can use, there's a little bit of leeway there, but 90-95% of it is to expand our roadways. And principally because we have SB1, it took a long time and it's not enough, but we'll get there and at some point. And so again, it's that expansion, or this expenditure plan that I showed you is an expansion plan. So
I would hope there'd be a little flexibility there, because we have maintenance issues here, and Loomis isn't growing at nearly at the extent that, say, West Roseville is, where a lot of it sounds like new projects are needing funding for new roads and expansions. Our need is taking care of what we've got, and that's really where our deficit lies.
And the flexibility comes in terms of what we, and it's the engineering term, apologize for that, and you heard it at SACOG, is complete streets. So if you have a street that doesn't have curb, gutter, and sidewalk, there's an opportunity, although that street needs to be rehabilitated, you're actually expanding that roadway, and you can actually install the curb gutter and sidewalk. If you want to just chip seal a road, this probably isn't the funding source for you. But if you want to do a complete street like you did out here with grant funding for Taylor Road, that's something you could use this money for.
Okay. Okay. A couple others. I'm going to take some time here. So talk to us about how Loomis falls within, are we a greater contributor to the funds, or are we greater takers, right? There is such a thing where in any tax program you have people who give and people who take, and there are some who benefit more than others.
Right. And so I'd like to explain this from the standpoint of that South Placer County is a transportation system, and so it doesn't function very well if one community improves its roadways and the other one doesn't. So, for example, Sierra College Boulevard is a perfect example. That needs to be improved in Lincoln, and in Placer County, and in Loomis, and in Rockland, and in Roseville. And if everybody doesn't contribute to that roadway, then it doesn't get fixed right. And so it doesn't do us any good for us not to have Loomis, for you not to be in this measure. You will receive more benefit than you create. That's the truth. Roseville and Rockland generate the lion's share of sales tax in South Placer County, with things like the Auto Mall and the Galleria and Creekside, and their manufacturing and business to business, and Rockland down here at Sierra College. So you will receive more than you will contribute. But that's really important, and it's not some people think, oh, well, Roseville might not want to hear that. Well, that's not true, because it's a regional transportation system. If there's a linkage, if something doesn't get fixed here in Loomis, it affects everyone else. So although you're more of a recipient than a donor, it's very important for Loomis to be in this measure.
Okay.
And that's why when the state had to create, I didn't touch upon this presentation, but last time, and the state passed a bill, Assembly Bill 1413, that allowed us to create this sub-county district. And the reason they did that is they said it has to be the 4 contiguous cities. They didn't want, it can be 3, but in our system, it's very important that all cities be in, and that's why we've included Loomis from the get-go. And our hope is that Loomis stays in this in the system. Now we're going to have poll, and our board is going to make a decision what that geography is in January. But our hope and our desire is that Loomis is part of the system for this funding measure.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I just have one question.
Sure.
So you're saying if we have the sales tax, then we would not have to rely on developers' money to say address the Horseshoe Bar I-80 interchange? Would we be able to move immediately? So we'd still have to wait on.
You need both, really. I mean,
Okay.
Loomis is growing.
Right.
You may have decided to go in a different direction with some development recently, but you're going to grow over time, and those traffic impact fees that are paid, even when you create one house, that's a significant contribution to something like this. So it's a combination of both. I would say maybe you have to rely less on those if with this measure, because you're kind of a recipient more than a donor. So, but they are still important, but maybe to a somewhat lesser degree.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Anybody else? For public comment? Okay, thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to open it up for public comment now.
Sonia Coupler, 5630 Tudor Way. Of the $3 billion that you talked about, the developer fees and the sales tax increase, how long does that cover needs of expansion for? Is it 2 decades, 3 decades? And then if the town of Loomis was to be part of the sales tax increase for this area, how long would that tax go on for? Is it never ending? Is it because we keep growing, we need to keep collecting it? Just curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the measure that we're currently examining, and again, this still has to be decided, but typically in Placer County, revenue measures, although they could be a permanent one, in Placer County, it's been the desire of the electorate to limit those to 30 years, and then if we still need more, we'd renew it. So everything we talked about here would be for a 30-year measure.
Thank you, Mike. Any other?
Jean Wilson, 4301 Barton Road, and that was one of my questions, was how long? The other one is, it hasn't been mentioned tonight anyway, how much, what percent, what sales tax you're looking at proposing, 1%, 0.5%, 2%, that hasn't been mentioned. And a comment is that even though the businesses of Loomis that collect sales tax may be less than what we get back, I'm also looking at the fact that we who are Loomis residents are also going to be shopping in Rockland, Roseville, other places. Even though we'd like to shop locally as much as we can, we are still, if they pass this measure, we're still going to be contributors. Clear from what slid by pretty quickly, what is being looked at potentially for what kind of improvements. I remember on the last one, basically what Loomis would get out of it was extended access ramps, and that was about it. Whereas what we really need in the long run is to have the overcrossing expanded to beyond the 2 lanes that it currently is. So I don't know what is being looked at, what would we really, what might be proposed that we would really get out of that. Is it only the extended access lanes or something that we really need, like the expanded overcrossing, which I know is very expensive? So that's my 2 questions. How much sales tax and what's involved in Horseshoe Bar?
So the answer to the first question is it's a 0.5 cent sales tax measure. And a couple other things I haven't mentioned either is there's 2 very important aspects to that is one, like any other measure, it can be, if we're not doing it properly, it can be recalled at any time. So that's all what's available to any measure in any jurisdiction. But the other really important thing is that we are going to have a citizen oversight committee. So we are going to have we're proposing 2 citizens from each of the 4 communities would sit on a oversight committee that would oversee a formal audit on these funds to make sure that these funds are being spent on exactly what we say we're going to spend these on. The state of California has a problem with saying, well, we want the money for this, and then they spend it on that. We're going to set this up so it can't, 2 things. One is it can't be used on something else, and one of the important aspects of this measure is the state can't take it. It's prohibited by the Constitution. So this is our money for Placer County. The state can't take it away from us. To answer the second question on Horseshoe Bar Road, the money, or the project, as I understand it, and Britt, maybe you can jump in here after, but we're designing the interchange itself, so the on-ramps, the off-ramps, the overcrossing, all that, where it connects into the roadways, and Britt, maybe you can answer a little bit more about that.
So
The Horseshoe Bar Interchange is going to be kind of a joint project. It's going to be funded by many different funding sources. It's going to be some local funds. It'll be some impact fee program funds. The total project will be widening to 4 lanes over the freeway and then extending the ramps so that there's proper queuing distances for people getting on and off, and the signals on both sides. I estimated that project at $25 million a couple of years ago, and I think we're probably going to be closer to $35 million before that goes to construction. So this tax program would help fund a large portion of that, but there would still be some other costs, and we would probably go after a grant. This is one of those opportunities where we would look for federal or state grants. I think a couple of points, though, that I want to make clear is that being part of when we're generating our own money with a sales tax measure, the state designates us as a self-help community. If we're in this program and we get designated as self-help program or community, that's another little checkbox. It's another point for us, if you will, when we go after grants and stuff. So it shows that we are trying to do our part. The other thing too that Mike did a great presentation, but he didn't talk much about congestion on the freeways and how that affects Loomis directly. One of the things that affects us is if we've got to go to the hospital, we don't have a hospital here. You're going to take an ambulance ride, and ambulances are subject to congestion too. You're going to be waiting in that. We need clear paths to services like hospitals and that kind of stuff. The other thing is that when the freeways do get congested, people find their ways to the local roads. We have a lot of problems on our local roads now. As congestion gets worse over the years on the freeways, those problems are going to come to Loomis too. This would give us some opportunity to help deal with some of those problems. And some of the projects that we would be working on currently, if you look at the last CIP update that I brought in front of the town, I had a list of close to $100 million worth of projects that are unfunded but identified as projects that we need to do here in Loomis to try to work on our transportation system. And we've got to find ways to fund that. We can only put that on the backs of developers so much. You can't raise impact fee programs and make developers pay for existing conditions. You can't make them pay for things that happen outside the town that influence us, like more people on the roads on the freeways. So we've got to find a funding source for this kind of stuff. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Hi, Roger Smith. I'm glad to have an opportunity to make some comment. And I didn't know there would be public comment, but enjoyed hearing more about the sales tax proposal. Clarifying, it is just a Western Placer County effort. I believe the agenda said county-wide. So I think we need to be clear on that it's just a Western Placer County or Southern. I have 3 items I'd like to harp on a little bit. I didn't hear, in our neck of the woods, the major north-south highway, I'll call it, is Sierra College Boulevard. I didn't hear that mentioned as a biggie project, regional project, in the list of regional projects. Maybe it is more on the when we talk about Roseville and Rockland projects, and certainly your comments about needing that complete route worked on as a joint effort. That's very important. But I hope that is very high on the list as our major north-south highway through Placer County, all the way from Highway 50 to Lincoln. Really, that's a major route there. So that should be big on the list regionally. Placer Parkway, I heard brief mention of it. My biggest heartburn, I think, with the whole movement is that I would not want to see a lot of money going to Placer Parkway, a brand-new highway, what I consider and many consider a growth-inducing route that will explode the North Roseville region. It's in the county, but north of Roseville. Explosive population impacts if that is built, which will wipe out maybe some initial traffic relief that it would provide. So I heard Placer Parkway mentioned, so I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. Is that sort of an iffy element of the project? And then, as most of you know, I continue to be an advocate of access to I-80 from King Road. I think that's the big solution for Loomis. I think that as part of this big effort to solve traffic problems, I think it would be more effective to focus money on that than to improve our Horseshoe Bar Road interchange, considering that goes into all two-lane connecting roads at this point. I think a better bang for the buck would be to focus on access at I-80 and Rockland, and King Road. We are only responsible in the town here for it would be the north side of the freeway. The other side, I believe, is county-owned, so there has to be some coordination there. But I'm just wondering if my question is, was that considered in your analysis of biggie-type projects? Thank you.
So, in order, I'll take those. Sierra College Boulevard. So certain roadways, and Placer Parkway falls into this as well, there's certain roads in the county that are more direct, that we can find a nexus more directly to growth. And Sierra College is one of those. And so we set up, 20 years ago, an impact fee program called the South Placer Regional Transportation Authority. And it has a fee called Tier 1. And one of the big projects in Tier 1 is to fund Sierra College all the way from Lincoln all the way down to the Sacramento County, Placer County line. So Sierra College is not in our expenditure plan because it's paid for. So we have a method to pay for Sierra College Boulevard, and it's paid for huge improvements on that, mostly in Roseville but it's going to be improved up with Bickford Ranch and some other projects that's going to be happening here pretty soon. But it's primarily paid for by development impact fees.
Mike, can I interject there? When Sparta was formed, Loomis chose not to be part of Sparta, so we did not participate in that. So that section of Sierra College Boulevard,
yes, that's true.
Sierra College Boulevard is being improved all around Loomis. Loomis is responsible to improve the part of Sierra College Boulevard that's within Loomis town limits. We've got to find a funding source for that. We set up a traffic impact fee program to do that. It's going to fund a small percentage of that, and the town of Loomis has got to come up with the rest of that because at the time we chose not to be part of Sparta.
And you could use that local project funding that could be applied towards Sierra College. The last question was on Placer Parkway. So Placer Parkway, similar to Sierra College Boulevard, is primarily needed to accommodate growth. And so with Sparta, the South Placer Regional Transportation Authority, we set up another funding called Sparta Tier 2. And primarily that's paid for by Lincoln, by Roseville, and by Placer County. And it's 660, well, I'm sorry, it's in Placer County only, because it goes through Sutter County too. But in Placer County only, it's a $595 million project. There's only a very small portion in the expenditure plan of about $25 million, and that's to pay for the bonding costs so that road gets built sooner than when it would come. Otherwise, we kind of have to build as we go. So there's money in there to help pay for the borrowing cost to make that road go through quicker. But otherwise, only 25 out of $595 million is in our plan. Placer Parkway was actually approved. The alignment for that roadway was actually approved way back in 2010. And so PCTPA and Placer County and Roseville and Lincoln approved that roadway. We certified the environmental document. We actually got a federal environmental document approved for that. So that roadway is actually an approved roadway, and now it's being implemented in phases. And the first phase of that roadway is actually in the design phase. Placer County is building the first phase of that, which is the completion of the Whitney Ranch interchange on Highway 65, and then extending that roadway to Foothill Boulevard. And that will probably happen in the next 2 to 3 years. And it's paid for out of the county and United Auburn Indian Community are fronting the costs of that interchange, and then it's paid back out of that Sparta Tier 2 funding, the portion that they are not responsible to pay for. So. Did I answer? The King Road question? The King Road question, I think I have to defer to Britt on that one. We take from the community what your priority is. So if you want to fund King Road, if you want to fund Horseshoe Bar Road, we don't design the transportation system in your communities. You tell us what to do. So I'll leave that up to Britt.
So the King Road interchange is essentially on hold at the moment. We're not pursuing it at this time, given that Caltrans won't support it, FHWA will not support it. The cost of doing it would be astronomical, and I don't know how we could fund that, especially if we would have to fight legally Caltrans and FHWA to make that connection. There's some concerns that interchange is way too close to Penryn and Horseshoe Bar. There's not enough room to actually have the merge lanes come on and off the road to take the traffic on and off the road. So it's not officially dead, but we've got a placeholder for that, and we would study it if that looked like it would make sense, or if it looked like Caltrans or FHWA would support that project.
Yeah, and I guess I should say we did do that with Britt. We went back to Caltrans District 3 and we went to FHWA and we said, hey, come on guys, can you take a look at it one more time, and can we do this? And they pretty much told us, we told you no, and the answer is no. We won't fund a nickel for that interchange at King Road. Essentially what you'd have to do is you'd have to close Horseshoe Bar Road to do another interchange, and that's probably not feasible. So.
Any more public comment?
David Ring, 3486 Delmar. I just noticing here that you have some improvements for the Capitol Corridor Rail and other buses. Can you talk a little bit more about what's going on with it, other than just new roads, but maybe some other options for rail?
Yeah, and I wanted to reiterate that we do have a lot of money in here for roads, and we're building roads to the right-of-way that we purchased way back when. But we have to do transit. I mean, there is not a choice. We have to do everything in order to relieve traffic congestion. And one of the biggest projects, and I'm sorry I didn't mention Capitol Corridor, but we are working on plans to basically, it's called the Third Track Project, and that is to add a third track all the way from Roseville to Sacramento. And initially that would allow 3 more trips, 3 more trains. There's 1 train in the morning, 1 train in the afternoon now, and then there's the throughway bus service that connects to trains in Sacramento. What the first phase of that project would do would add 3 trains in each direction, so we'd have 3 trains to Roseville. And then the second phase of that project, of which the funding in the expenditure plan is matching funds for that, to get other state and federal funds. The second phase would expand that to 10 trains in each direction every day. So roughly hourly service to Roseville. A lot of folks in Rockland and Auburn and even here, even though you don't have service here to Loomis, say, well, what about us? Why can't you fund it all the way to Rockland or Loomis or Auburn? The answer to that is UP owns the right-of-way, and whatever UP says, because they own it, they have actually grandfathered power back to the Constitution, and it's theirs. They get to say how it's used. They've said, no, we will only do it to Roseville. Now, of recent, they've said, well, maybe we're not going to allow 10 trips or 20 trips to go to Rockland or to Auburn, but we might allow a few more trips. Right now, one train goes all the way to Auburn. So there's some wiggle room that we might be able to expand that in the future to all the way to Auburn, to Colfax, and it won't happen in my lifetime, but maybe someday even up to Tahoe, so we have better transit service up there by train. But Capital Corridor is great. The ridership it's the most popular commuter rail system in the entire United States. It's one or two now, but it's very popular, very well utilized, and it's kind of growing by leaps and bounds. People are actually using it a lot to commute to the Bay Area now. Your super commuters are actually commuting every day on that train down to Silicon Valley to work in their jobs or work one day a week down in their jobs, and they live here in Placer County. So, very important project.
Thank you, Mike. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing and seeing none, let's bring it back to council.
Just a couple comments. Throughout this last year, we've had quite a bit of opportunity, especially through the village. We had a retail analysis study, and we talked about the retail leakage that leaves the town of Loomis, and that number is significant. So Loomis is going to be funding this regardless of if we're in or out. I've seen, golly, in the last week, people that say they never shop outside Loomis, shopping way outside Loomis. So I know that it happens, and the numbers that we had from that analysis were quite great. We've had also, I've had people, they have a lot of questions about the SB1, and the SB1 is rehab. That's for fixing potholes, dilapidated roads, things like that. So this would be for expansion of existing facilities and new facilities. I've also heard from some constituents about just having the town do its own sales tax measure, and the numbers that would generate. Sean, do we have any idea of what that number would be?
Yes. Sorry. So 1% Bradley Burns tax is what we get for sales tax. That generates 1.5 million-ish, right? Not round numbers. 1.5 million town-wide. So if you do a half cent, so half of that would be about 750,000. If Costco came in, Costco is anticipated to generate about 1.5 million additional sales tax. So you basically double that, 750. So we would end up getting about $1.5 million of new revenue if the town passed its own half-cent sales tax measure. And as Britt, was talking about project-wise, just for Horseshoe Bar Interchange by itself, $25 million road improvement, putting all of that money from that, if we were to do our own sales tax, would take us 20-something years.
30 years.
Yeah. So, and, looking at the escalation of price, obviously, a $45 million, $25 million project now isn't going to be that in 20 years. So,
Thank you. The other thing, and good resources for people on this PowerPoint presentation. Follow PCTPA on Facebook. They're putting things out all the time. Their website is very good. They're on Twitter. There's a lot of things that are going on about this, and so I think it's very important for the residents of Loomis to be truly educated about what this actually is. And so there's a lot of resources out there for people to turn to, and so I encourage people, as questions come up, reach out to PCTPA staff, reach out to me. I serve on that board. Jan also serves on that board. We'd be more than happy to answer questions and sit down with you, but I do think the education process in this is crucial. So thank you.
Madam Mayor. So I just have just one thing to consider, and that is if Loomis is not in it, What does that mean? Because the way I see it, we don't have a lot of funding sources, and we don't have a plan. We don't have a funding plan moving to the future. And not having a funding plan is a recipe for disaster. So I think it's important for people to understand that this is really a good opportunity for Loomis to get into a program where we have significant funding moving into the next few generations. And if we don't, then we're going to be looking around asking people to come up with another plan. And so it's time to step up and make Loomis a better place and improve our roads, and just not for today, but for future generations. So when those calls come from the pollsters, I hope that I would encourage people to be honest with themselves and really consider how we're gonna move to the next decade and next few decades. And I think this is a great opportunity. Thanks for coming in, Mike. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate that. Yep. All right. So that was a informational presentation. Again, thank you for coming on that. And I may have, there's no way to flip the agenda to put the vaping next? Okay. I'm so sorry about that. We have some kids here that I know want to have some public comment, and they have school tomorrow. So if it's okay with everybody, I'd like to move the vaping next. Is that all right? Yeah. Okay.
No objection.
All right. So we're going to move to item 13, e-cigarette and vaping control measures.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just say that, what better excuse to have a tired kid in school than to sit at a Loomis council meeting and talk about seeing your local government in action. So at the last council meeting, for the past two council meetings, in October and November both, we've talked about regulating vaping in some way or another. The first meeting, we talked about potential solutions to do that, different ways that we can get there. And then at the November meeting, we actually had a presentation from the Placer County Tobacco Control folks who are also here to give kind of their perspective on where things are at countywide. So at this point, and also I should say in November, council directed us to bring back kind of a menu of options and see what direction you wanted us to move forward with. So in the staff report, I have kind of a summary direction from the October 8th council meeting, a summary of what I heard from the November meeting, and I kind of just want to run through that almost like a menu, give you a status of where those issues are, and then ask for council's yes, we want to go forward with this, no, we don't want to go forward with this, or we want to do something different but still move forward with it in one way or the other. So if that's all right, that's kind of the way I'd like to go forward with that. Okay, so in October, at the October 8th council meeting, one of the things we talked about was preparing for consideration an ordinance prohibiting smoking in out-town parks. And so tonight was actually the second reading for that ordinance, which means that it goes into effect in, it's 30 days, right, Jeff? 30, yeah, so 30 days. And at the November council meeting, we added language in about prohibiting the smoking of cannabis as well. So that ordinance will be taking effect in 30 days, so we'll have that on the books. That's all wrapped up. One of the other things that we talked about was preparing a resolution advising town residents of the dangers of vaping and e-cigarette use. And so at this point, I'm asking council if you want to continue with that and pursue that, we can do that and have it ready to go for the January agenda if you wanted to continue with that.
I'm good, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so we talked about doing this, and this would be in addition to the items that are below. Is everybody in favor of doing that resolution?
Yes.
Okay, ready?
Okay, we got a check mark on that one. The next one was preparing an ordinance creating an administrative citation and requiring a diversion program for youth under the age of 21 caught with vaping or tobacco-related products. That was recommended by the tobacco control folks at the last council meeting, October. That was the direction that I received as well. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're still on board with that one as well.
Are we okay?
Good.
Yep.
And then the last one, second to the last one, sorry, from October was prepare an ordinance prohibiting the sale of flavored e-cigarette cartridges and e-juice in town with the exception of mint and menthol flavored products. So there was some confusion on whether or not this was a complete ban of all like e-cig cartridges and e-juice, including the menthol or mint flavors, or if those flavors are excluded from the potential ban. So I went back and I watched the video, which is so well done by our videographer over here, Ken. And at almost exactly 3 hours into that meeting, the direction that I got from council was to look at banning the e-cig cartridges and the e-juice stuff, all flavors, but not mint and menthol, and then obviously not the regular tobacco flavor. But because of the confusion, I wanted to clarify that and see where you wanted to go. If you want to expand it to all flavors or keep it as just the kind of fruity flavors that are directed more towards the youth. I'll note for this disclosure or whatever, my understanding is that Juul has already taken off most of the flavors that they have, with the exception of mint and menthol as well. So having the ban in place would be good, because if they decide to start selling it, they wouldn't be able to do that in our businesses here. But I just wanted to throw that out as well.
I have something I'd like to say then. So I think our intention was to ban all the Juul products, no matter what flavor it was. And I think we only mentioned the menthol and mint because of the chew people buy. And I know that we have some of the people here from the tobacco control, and they were here that night as well, and they might be able to help us with this to get clarifying information. But I do believe that that is really what we meant to do. Would you like to come up? Thank you.
I think one of the things that we talked about was modeling it after what Auburn did, and so that would help too,
Right.
to see what Auburn actually did.
Thank you.
Okay. So first, my name is Amy McGrath with the Placer County Tobacco Control Program. So first, I'd like to start out just with the state recommendation, just to set a baseline. The state recommendation is a full flavors ban across the board, including traditional cigarettes, chew, e-cigarettes, everything. In terms of what Auburn did, they banned all flavors, all e-cigarette flavors, so let me start over. They banned all flavors except mint, menthol, and wintergreen chew and traditional cigarettes. So their ban does ban even mint, wintergreen, and menthol e-cigarette flavors, which is pretty important because I know Sean mentioned that Juul took off a lot of their products, but mint is actually their most popular product, and that's what's left out there. So that's why part of why Auburn left the ban on the e-cigarette flavored menthol products, because those are still really popular among youth. But like I mentioned, the state really recommends flavors ban across all products. Does that help clarify
Yes.
the? Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Does anybody else have any questions for her?
Are they FDA? I heard that a lot of those products are FDA approved.
The e-cigarette products?
Yeah.
They're not.
Even the
They're
ones
not
sold,
regulated by the FDA.
not necessarily the Juul, but the other brands that are sold in vaping shops.
Right. They are not regulated by the FDA at this time.
I thought I heard
Generally.
that some were by someone that worked at a store, because I was asking.
Do you want to clarify that? I'm not positive.
Can you ask the question once more? So I'm Alex Ride with the Placer Tobacco Control Program also.
Well, I heard from someone that works at a store that sells just that type of products, that a lot of the products are FDA approved and are not what the kids are smoking that's causing their lung issues.
So that's an actual common misconception. No vaping product is regulated by the FDA yet. They said they were supposed to be regulated in 2018. They pushed that back to 2022. There's some talk that it potentially may be sooner, but as of right now, no product has been regulated by the FDA. Only our traditional tobacco products are.
And I have one other question that I also asked this person that works at one of those. They said that the kids that are getting the bad lung diseases, that are buying the stuff off the street, kind of, it's because they're heating like a vitamin E oil, and when you heat vitamin E, it turns to something different that's not something you can consume.
Yeah, so that's some of the initial reports, but they're saying that's only some of the products, and there's across the board all sorts of different products. So we can't say exactly for sure, yes, it's just the vitamin E acetate that's causing that, because there have been products that they tested where people were using for this vaping lung injury, and it was other things that were in it also.
So it's not
we don't
just,
have a definite
but vitamin E is an issue.
Potentially an issue right now.
Because it changes the context of the vitamin when it's heated, is that?
It's more because of an oil base. It's really the oil and different things
It
that are
changes
heated
its
into the
context and
lungs.
turns to something lethal rather than something
Yeah,
healthy.
I don't know the whole science behind how that works, but I just know that the CDC did come out with some initial reports saying that yes, potentially it's maybe the vitamin E acetate, but they still have a good few weeks of studies that they need to run, because across the board it's not in all of the products.
Okay, that's just some things I was checking out on my own.
No, it's perfect.
That I just wanted to be more clear than what I was hearing here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so hearing that, I think, do we have better clarity on including the mint flavored vaping cartridges as well?
I think so. I would ask to, if council could say, if we can go down the line.
Yeah, if we could.
Yeah, just so that way I know where we're going. And so the question is, do you want the ban to be all flavors of the Juul pods, e-juice stuff, including mint menthol, but not banning all Juul products, e-cig products, right? It's only the flavored products.
Yeah, I think maybe to make it even simpler is we would like to ban all e-cigarette flavored tobacco. So you don't have to worry about the chew and all that.
Right.
I'm going to vote no on that.
Okay.
No, I'm for that.
All right, so you should do roll call on that.
Okay. Can we do a roll call then, or?
We should probably open it up for public.
Well, we're not done.
Okay.
I do kind of have a question. Are you guys part of like a peer review, or what do you guys?
He's talking to the microphone.
Oh,
Sorry, are you guys here with this, for this topic? Okay, what do you guys, can I hear from you guys a little bit? What are you guys seeing amongst your peers?
Yeah. So we'll open it up for public comment. Thank you, council member.
Sorry, I just
No,
figured we'd
it's
hear from
good.
these guys. They're the ones really affected by this.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Madeline Kramer. I'm a senior in high school, and my experience with vape product, for the most part, has been like going to the bathroom at school, and you can't get into the stalls because you can like see people sitting on the floors in all the stalls, like passing around their vape products. It's like a lot of people are just in the bathroom the entire day, or in the hallways. You can smell it in the classrooms. A lot of people vape during class, and it's not really a problem with our administration or our teachers. They try locking the bathrooms and sending us all to one bathroom that's monitored. It doesn't stop anything. So for the most part, that's what I've experienced in high school. And it also goes outside of that to like, it's kind of become like a social activity, and that's how most people start vaping, is like outside of school, and then it becomes more addictive, and then that's when it starts becoming like a common thing during class and whatnot.
Which high school are you at?
Colfax.
Colfax, okay.
Thank you.
Do you guys have something? I'd like to hear from all you guys if that's cool. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Winston Wong from Almont High. I'm a sophomore, and let's start. Okay, so vaping is a very big problem so far. I've seen people actually sell vape at school, especially like those peak hours during passing period when we're like in the bathroom. They just like bring a lot of vape to school and just like sell flavors. And like what we could do about this is like we can maybe add some more control, because like a lot of people are making DIY products, like things are like that's not really on the market right now, or maybe like there's a lot of third-party vape makers, not just Juul out there. And how we could do this is like we couldn't do prevention anymore because like it already happened. What we could do is like we could get kind of like aggressive with it and just like crack down on it basically, and this probably will slow down. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very much appreciate it.
Okay, hi, my name is Sarah Downey. I'm a junior in high school. And so my experience is very similar to Winston and Madeline's. It's really become an epidemic among high school students. And I've noticed growing up in a really small community, it's really hard to not fall into it just because of how like little there is to do for kids and just how tight-knit the community is. But really, it's really hard for kids because the marketing tactics that these companies are using are so manipulative in the sense that they're using flavors of, like the flavors that they're using are just good. And they're targeting kids with the names they're using. For example, I looked up some of the names and found Candy Crush and Lava Flow. And also the packaging of these products, they're just targeting kids. And so, yeah, and it's really hard for kids to not fall into this habit. And I think it's often looked at as the kids' fault, that, you know, they're just like rebellious teens, it's gonna happen. But there's kids literally in my AP classes that are like 4.0 kids, Ivy League bound, 4-year college bound, that are going to the bathrooms, taking bathroom breaks, and going and vaping. So, hopefully that just provided kind of a sense of urgency that this is a big issue and it's affecting high schools all across the area. Yeah, thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Sorry. Where do you see your peers getting access to these?
Definitely smoke shops. They are very accessible. Like, I know there's a lot, like you have to be over 21, I don't know what it is, but the owners of these shops are not complying to those laws.
Okay, so they're actually able to get them at point of sale.
Yeah,
Okay.
without like any fake identification or, yeah.
Okay.
Some of them do have that though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
So I'm Eiley Ride from the Placer County Youth Commission. I also go to Rockland High School, and I see a lot of kids selling the vapes to each other. So it'll be either at school during passing period, or it'll even be outside of school, behind stores. I know a lot of kids also buy them online. It's very easy to do it. There's like, I think you can buy them on eBay, and they don't check for your age or anything, so they're buying off there and then they're sharing them between, and then they're using them during class, and it's just not being regular. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, guys. Just to add on to what she talked about, rebellious teens. Teens are kind of rebellious. Plus, with nicotine, which is a highly addictive substance, once it gets into the teenage mind, that's not gotta be good, right?
Yeah.
So I seen like anti-vaping, like organizations put like posters around school. I seen like groups of boys just like tear down posters and rip them up, you know. And like I could have just like, if I say like I'm like an anti-vapor or something, I could have get like beaten up at school, you know. Because like people are kind of rebellious sometimes. So we gotta keep this quiet.
Thank you. All right. So we should open, yeah.
Sonia Coupler, 5630 Tudor Way. So I just wanted to get a clarification, the ordinance about the e-cigarettes, it's e-cigarettes only, and then it's only going to affect the shops in town that are actually selling them because you can't control ordering it over the internet, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And they can go to Rockland or Auburn or any other city and buy them?
Not Auburn.
Yes.
No, they banned it. Auburn banned it.
They have vape shops in Auburn. Anybody can go in there and buy it. That's where I talked to somebody.
Yeah.
Goes until back January 1st.
Okay.
William Quenville, 6280 Horseshoe Bar Road. I'm going to be very unpopular here. I'm a pastor. I work with people with drug and alcohol problems. Nicotine is a very addictive drug. Part of the problem, if you look at the cases where we've had the lung infection and deaths, they have been aftermarket products that have been added with stuff in them that's not part of the product for the majority of those cases. These children are already addicted. Restricting the product is going to drive them out of town to get it, and they will get it. The problem is, and what needs to be addressed, is how to get them off it. And that is how to transition them off. The problem is that the vape juices now, they used to be, they would be down to like 5%. They're at 30, 40, 50% nicotine, which you cannot draw them down off of that. So there's no process right now to get these children off of it, because it is a drug and you have to come off it slowly. You can't just quit. I've seen people try to do that with other drugs and it doesn't work. So I think the ban is a great idea, but I think it's going to be totally ineffective in dealing with the problem. Until you educate children and give them a way and say, hey, if you want to get off it, we'll help you do that. But most insurance companies aren't going to help you get off vaping. If you got injectable drugs, they're all in. But vaping, and like I said, nicotine is incredibly addictive. So I don't think a ban is going to solve anything until we find a solution on how to treat the problem as a medical problem, and that's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Okay, okay.
Can I just get, I just want to make sure I understand, we're not talking about the chew? We're only talking about the vaping? Can you, because
Yes.
when I was confused with what Jan said.
Yes.
Because I went and talked to our shops, and they're not selling that much vape. It's not going to, but I didn't talk to them about chew, so I want to make sure.
It's not, as far as I know, nothing has been decided at this point, but what I believe the case would be, and what Auburn did, is they banned all flavored e-cigarettes only. That's it.
Okay, thanks.
So Sean, sorry. Yeah.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. So we've got a few other things to consider on this item. So my recommendation would be to finish up the conversation with the items on this agenda item and then go back open to public comment.
Okay. So we got hung up, I think, on item number 4, Sean, and at that point, I think we started asking people to come up. So
We have one guy that's almost up here.
Yeah, sure. Come on in.
David Ring, 2486 Delmar. So you had mentioned the FDA approved, and there's a difference between FDA approved and FDA cleared. And all the e-cigarette stuff has been FDA cleared, which means that it resembles other products on the market. FDA approved means it's been studied and that it has been shown to
it's cleared.
be more.
FDA cleared.
So the vape stuff is FDA cleared, which is just means that it's similar to stuff that's already being sold. FDA approved is stuff that's been studied and shown to be more beneficial than harmful.
Okay, thank you.
So that's just.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Jean.
Jean Wilson, I just wanted to say that I would encourage you to ban all flavored products. I know last time there was some discussion of, well, we don't want to inconvenience the adults who want menthol and mint, but from my perspective, if they really need that, they can go someplace else and find it. And if they have to suffer the effects of actual cigarette, maybe it'll discourage them a little bit. Recognizing, of course, that nicotine is extremely addictive and that these e-cigarettes are even worse than regular cigarettes. As far as I'm concerned, it's more important to consider the kids who will go to the mint and menthol if they can't get bubble gum and cherry and all the other goody flavors. And just to make it a little more tobacco-like that they have to endure if they can't readily get the flavors. If that discourages anybody at all, then I think it's worth doing, and let the adults who have to have that go someplace else and get it. I speak as the daughter of someone who died from tobacco-related health problems. And he started smoking at age 10, which was probably not that uncommon back then. And he was smoking a pack a day by the time he was a teenager. He died from tobacco-related things. His 3 brothers died of lung cancer from smoking. So I take it very seriously that anything we can do to help just some of these kids not get into it, and if it means take the flavors off the market in Loomis, okay, that's just a small step, but it's something I think we should do. And I agree with Bill. Getting kids off the addiction is a serious problem, but at least we can take the step of not making it available here.
Thank you, Jean. Anybody else? I'm going to bring it back to Sean. So Sean, I think we have to wait on your item number 4 until we're done with your presentation, and then we'll
Come back? Okay. The next one that we talked about in October was preparing a letter from the town or local legislators supporting legislation that addresses and regulates sale of e-cigarettes and e-juice. Status is that we can have that letter finalized. We'll have that letter finalized for the mayor's signature in the upcoming weeks, so that's in process. And then back on at the November 12th council meeting, there were a couple different kind of policy areas that I wanted to get clarification on and direction from council. And so one was, we talked about creating a 1,000-foot radius buffer around schools and parks that prohibits tobacco sales completely. Existing businesses would be grandfathered in and would not be affected. So there's at least probably 3 that would be grandfathered in. And I put a note there that staff strongly supports that concept, that we look at doing that. The second from November was establishing a tobacco retailer licensing program. The funds raised by the program would be used for tobacco-related education and program administration. I do have some concerns about the impact on existing staff if we instituted that kind of a program as far as enforcement. I think it would kind of stretch it a little bit thin, and I think that with banning the sale of tobacco within 1,000 feet of our parks or schools, I think that we're able to kind of contain it a little bit more. I don't know if the licensing program is something that we would actually need or not, but we can consider that if council wants to move that direction as well. So those are the only 2 that I needed direction on from the November meeting as well.
Okay, does anybody on the council have any further questions?
I have a comment, Madam Mayor. Okay, so first of all, thank all of you for coming tonight, all right, and giving us your perspective and your input. It's a really challenging topic for government because we have a lot of people coming to us and saying, help fix the problem. This is a problem. It's an issue. Help us fix it. And in a lot of ways, it's our job to fix problems. But here's a few, I think, points that ought to be considered. So you guys told us that there's kids selling on campus. That's illegal. You told us there's kids using on campus. That's clearly illegal. I also hear there's kids manufacturing this off market or in the black market. That's illegal. There's nothing that we're proposing tonight that's going to eliminate that because it's already illegal and they're still doing it. To take it a step further, this country's created an environment where we criminalize people for drug use and they still do it. So we could ban the use of tobacco, we could ban the production of tobacco, and people would still use it because that's what people historically have done with all drugs across the spectrum. And there's nothing that government can do tonight, at least the town council, to stop that, even if we banned all tobacco products outright. within the town limits because they can get it on the internet. And if the federal government bans tobacco, then they can still have access to these things because there's a black market. So the point I really want to make is government has a role to play, certainly, and I think something will be done tonight. But for young people, I want to make this clear. I think the best person to make these decisions is you and not government. So if you think that using tobacco and vaping products is a bad idea, then I think the best person to make that choice is you, not us, because we can't stop you. Ultimately, we're not even criminalizing the use of tobacco. We're just saying if you use tobacco, if you buy tobacco, then you're going to get a fine, an administrative fine. And what's to stop someone who's highly addicted, Bill Quinville, at 40 and 50% nicotine rate in some of these products, what's to stop them if we fine them for $100? So, this is somewhat of a futile conversation to a degree. I mean, I think we want to show that we're doing something here because that's what we're supposed to do, but ultimately we're not going to, as Councilmember Baker would say, move the needle at all. So I think when we do something tonight, whatever we decide to do, and you go to school tomorrow and there's still kids using it and still trading it and manufacturing it and selling it on campus, I'm sorry. I mean, you're looking at the wrong people to fix this problem. It's just not within our control because this really is up to consumers. Ultimately up to the people who are using these products. I can't change that. So I don't want you to feel defeated because you will. This is not going to be fixed by what we do tonight. And I just want to lay that out in all honest terms, okay? So, having said that, that's it for my comments tonight on this.
I have a comment. I think what we lose track of is that people are concentrating on the deaths of altered e-cigarettes and products like that. And I'm thinking more of along the lines of corporations targeting children with the flavored Candy Crush or Lava Flow or all those type of items. And I don't see a problem with us making a stand, although it's very small town Loomis, that even Juul, who profits off of it, sees, oh, well, maybe there's a problem here. And yeah, there's always going to be somebody, okay, the prison system banned tobacco in the prisons. So what happened? They started smuggling in tobacco because nicotine, as Mr. Quinville mentioned, is just as habit-forming and harder to kick than heroin. So I guess we shouldn't have, banned it from the prison system, That way we wouldn't have had any illegal tobacco coming into the prison system. It would just be the tobacco that we sold at Canteen and maybe offset some of the costs of prison incarceration. But my main concern is the targeting of young people for a lifelong addiction. And I don't think insurance companies will actually do much for any type of drug addiction. Now maybe the opioids, but I think right now we could send a message that we do care about our youth in this town, and by banning all the flavored tobacco e-cigarettes. And then let the kids decide whether they want to put wintergreen chew in their mouth and kiss the boys that do or the girls that do and all that. But I think right now we can make a stand right here for our youth. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
I think it would be better, though, if we did something in the school than make some statement like this and makes, like this is, like Tim said, this is not going to do anything. It's just a statement. I think if we really want to help the kids, we need to do something in the school, something physical. Go in there and help them do programs or help them do something to make them more aware. Or this little statement is not going to stop anybody. It might make us feel better, but it's not going to do any good to the students.
You're just talking
and
about the
children.
statement right now?
Yeah.
This number 4, it's not going to do any good to, they're going to go somewhere, like they said, they get it online.
That's not a statement.
And Jenny said our stores aren't selling that much.
They're smuggling it.
So the kids are making it and they're selling it from buying it online. What we need to do if we want to help somebody is do something in the schools. Go to Del Oro and put a program on. Do something meaningful. This is nothing. I mean, it makes you feel good that before Christmas, we made this statement. But in January, they're going to be doing it still. But we need, if we're really interested in the youth, don't talk and make statements. Do something. Get in and get involved. Do something, not just say something. I've done a lot of community service over the years, and we can say all we want to say, but until we put ourselves out there and help somebody do something, it's meaningless.
Okay.
So I get pretty passionate about community service because of all that I've done, but you can't help somebody if you don't stand beside them.
Okay.
You need to be with them and help them find the solution for the problem that they're dealing with right now. A statement is not, it makes everybody feel good, but it's not going to do anything. That's just my opinion, but.
All right. Well, thank you. All right, Sean.
Madam Mayor, I have a few comments.
Sure.
So, this topic has not been easy, and I've spent a great deal of time studying this topic. My focus on this topic has nothing to do with the adults, and I'm sorry for the adults in the room. I really don't care much if you vape. You're an adult, and you're old enough to make a decision. Where I draw it back a little bit is with our youth, and I've seen youth addicted to a variety of things. I've spent quite a bit of time volunteering and used to run a high adventure ropes course for local teens in this area to help them with team building and confidence and things like that. And I do think that the only place that there is going to be a change is with you guys. And it's you guys with your peers. From what I heard tonight from them, most of the access either comes from local shops or online retailers. I would like to see something that targets local shops that sell to youth, and also some teeth for enforcement at high schools. Right now, there really is no teeth, and fortunately or unfortunately, or however you want to look at it, it's going to involve parents, it's going to involve a peer review, it's going to involve a lot of things, and I would like to support you guys in whatever way that is, but legislating a ban on something that primarily is purchased from Amazon or eBay here in the town of Loomis affects such a small, it doesn't move the needle. What we do need, as we've heard tonight, is a way to help these kids. And that's primarily my focus, is you guys. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to give our local jurisdictions, high schools, junior highs, elementary schools, whatever it is, as much teeth as possible to help these kids get off of this, enforce the law. If there's bootleg stuff being sold, there needs to be repercussions and ramifications, and I don't know what that answer is at this current venture in time, but really banning it all the way across the board. I mean, obviously certain flavors I don't care for, but I just don't see it changing anything. And the only way that we're going to change things is by doing something at our school level. And that's it. And enforcing the law. So if it's a retailer gets caught selling them, whatever that punishment is that the jurisdiction, whether it's in the county or the town of Loomis, wherever it is, that's where that needs to be handled. But we need to definitely do something to give our schools a fighting chance at this.
Thank you. All right.
So I'm going to wrap up where I think that we're at then. So going back to the October 8th stuff, ordinance for the smoking in the parks is done. Resolution advising town residents of the dangers of vaping and e-cigarette use. Council said that you want to pursue that, so I'll get that put together. For January, preparing an ordinance creating an administrative citation and requiring a diversion program for youth under the age of 21 caught with vaping and tobacco-related products, which is basically what you were talking about. I got direction from council to put that together. The fourth one about prohibiting the sale of flavored e-cig cartridges and e-juice in town, doesn't sound like there's support for that. I'm assuming the letter from the town to the local legislators will move forward with that one. And then from the November 12th council meeting, the 1,000-foot radius buffer around schools and parks prohibiting tobacco sales, doesn't seem like there's support for that. And establishing tobacco retailer licensing program, not support for that as well. Is that, do I got everything?
So going back to item 4, I don't think we came back and told you how we feel, but I also want to make sure that we're doing this properly by allowing maybe more public comment before we actually make that decision. So I just want to make sure that there's room for the public. Sorry, thank you. I want to make sure that we are following protocol, and I know that before we actually decide on item number 4, it might be prudent to go back out to public comment to make sure that is there anybody out there that might want to comment on this? Okay.
Hi, Sue Dobies, 5570 Arcadia Avenue. I too am very concerned about our young people, and even though you say that we should do something, I think by our town making a statement that we don't want this to be available, it may not stop all the children, but it may stop some if it's not as easily available. So I personally am for a ban. My son also, he's 32, and he is vaping so much, and there were some newspaper articles, and I'm really worried about him because he's just, every time you turn around, there he is vaping. And it's dangerous. It's a drug, it's nicotine, it constricts your blood vessels, it can affect the blood supply to your brain and the organs in your body. And I know that we had also at one time talked about how important education was in the schools, and I know that for tobacco control you were supporting that, if you have the resources to really get out there to all the schools and, talk to the kids. And so education is really important, but I do think it's important that our town, the town of Loomis, is against that, and we support the health of our children. That's how I feel.
Thank you.
William Kunkel, Senior, 6280 Horseshoe Bar Road. Just a quick note. Everybody talks about the high schools. I have a granddaughter who's in 5th grade at Loomis Grammar. There's a lot of vaping going on at that school, and it, all the way down to the little kids who are getting it passed to them by the older kids. So this is an epidemic that stretches from literally kindergarten to the top because it's everywhere. How to fix it? I got no idea. I have 2 children who are addicted to vaping, and when they changed the vaping stuff, you used to be able to get it down to like 5%, and we had them almost off, and then everything changed, and now trying to get them off this stuff, no health insurance will help me with anything to try and get them off it, and you have to find some way to do it, and the over-the-counter stuff doesn't work. So thank you.
Thank you, William.
David Ring. And I can't remember what this decision you guys made about sending a letter to the state. You had talked about sending a letter to the state council, and you said you were going to go through with that? Okay, so I had mentioned at the last meeting that also possibly sending a letter to the towns around us, Rockland and Roseville and Lincoln and all, just to tell them we're considering this. Is this something that anybody else is considering? Is it anybody else is interested in? Maybe we could go forward as a community, not just Loomis, but the surrounding communities as well, and get this taken care of. Okay.
Thank you, David.
Sonia Coupler, 5630 Tudor Way. It sounds like there's education programs within the high schools, but I'm just wondering, is there also education going on? If this is happening at Loomis Grammar School, is it happening in our own town school district? Because I think that would be I know they used to have the DARE program at the schools. Do they have like a DARE program type of program for talking to kids about vaping, or what does that even consist of? Can you answer that question?
So I'm Alex Wright again. Just making sure that I got your question fully. What's happening in the schools, both middle school, high school, and elementary school? So yes, so the Placer County Tobacco Control Program, we have our own funding to help with all of the education within schools, along with the Placer County Office of Education has a tobacco use prevention education grant, and they have someone, and we work in tandem together to help with all this education within all of our schools. So I had a conversation with a parent today talking about their elementary school and how they want us all to come out. So we do reach out actively to all of our school principals, to school counselors if needed, to get into the schools to give that education. We really are active in doing that. We have great presentations. We have brief intervention that PCOA can do with their 2P grant funding. So there's a lot of education that is happening within all of our schools countywide. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Oh.
I have a question, Jean Wilson, for the tobacco control people. And that is, you mentioned something about other ordinances in the area, and I wondered if they could tell us what is being done in other communities surrounding us so that we can be a part of a community-wide effort if there's going to be a community-wide effort to ban the flavored products.
Thank you, Jean. Oh. Yeah.
Amy McGrath, Placer County Tobacco Control Program. So to answer the question about what's happening in other jurisdictions in the area, I'm going to talk about specifically just Placer County. Placer County is really, really behind in tobacco control work. So right now, Loomis officially, Lincoln, Rockland, Roseville, Auburn have smoke-free parks ordinances. Unincorporated and Colfax do not. In terms of the retailer stuff, Auburn just passed their comprehensive ordinance, including the youth classes, the density ordinance, the flavors ban, and a tobacco retail license. Sorry, a lot happened in Auburn all at one time. So their density is 1,000 feet from a school or park, 500 feet from one another. Retail license is an $850 fee that goes towards enforcement and education for the retailers. And then Rockland has a density ordinance that's 1,000 feet from a school and 500 feet from one another, and that is all that exists in Placer County. So aside from the smoke-free parks, Rockland, Lincoln, unincorporated don't have anything else. So this really would be new and innovative for Placer County.
Okay.
I have a question for you.
Thank you.
Does that mean that Auburn's ordinance, does that mean that they're going to shut down the vaping stores that are...
For their flavors ban? Is that what you mean?
Well, it's a store, the store I was asking somebody about to get information, works in a store on Elm Street in downtown Auburn. So does that mean they're going to close that store down or restrict their buying? What kind of a ban does Auburn have for the stores, a retail store?
So, if I understand your question correctly, I think you're wondering if by banning flavors, are they shutting down the store?
Because that's what they sell, is thousands of flavors and the equipment
the short answer would be no. But the long answer would be Auburn is banning all flavored tobacco products except mint, menthol, and wintergreen, chew, and traditional cigarettes. In theory, the stores could decide to sell something else. They have until, I know it's January 1st for the other ordinance. I'm not positive that it's January 1st for the flavors ban, but they have until whatever date it is to get rid of their flavored tobacco products. At that time, it's up to them if they are going to close their doors or if they're going to kind of shift their business plan and put their time and attention into something else.
So then Auburn is planning to close down businesses that continue to sell flavored.
They're not going to force them to close. They're just going to
force them to limit their sales.
Or switch to selling other products that aren't flavored. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to add, I understand your point that you made about how there are already laws in place and that when those laws are not complied to, it's like, what can you do? And I understand your perspective as a policymaker, but from my perspective as a youth, the ban on flavors would make a huge difference in that it's a matter of convenience and it's a matter of appeal that are the reason that these kids are getting into these habits. So I just think that if there were no like cool flavors around, if that wasn't part of the allure, then the habits wouldn't start in the first place. And I think it would completely change everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. So, in conclusion, our main goal is to make vaping uncool. Because like people throughout the internet, let's say social media or like influencers have like made vaping cool. Our job here is kind of like to advocate and like vaping like uncool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing any other public comment? No? All right, hearing and seeing none. We're going to bring it back. And just want to make sure that does anybody else have anything that they want to say? No? I want to wrap it up a little bit here and just say that, over the last couple of months, our high school, Del Oro High School, the principal came in and asked us to help ban the flavored products of vaping. I also know that we had our sheriffs come in and help us ask to ban the flavored vaping. We have children here tonight that are are asking us to ban flavored vaping in Loomis. So for me, I just want to make sure that I point out that that's pretty much what I'm hearing. So, Sean, I think you need direction on item number 4.
I need direction on item number 4, and then also from the November meeting.
Okay.
That radius buffer, and then the licensing program.
Okay, so let's do a roll call on item number 4, and just a clarification, we are just clarifying this, that we want to make sure we say that the ordinance is prohibiting the sale of all flavored e-cigarette cartridges and e-juice in town, and then take out the exception of mint and menthol flavored products, because that would include chew. So can we have a roll call on who would approve that here?
Well, you need a motion
Oh,
and
motion?
a second.
Oh, okay.
Well, can I get a little clarification? This is limited specifically to vaping products.
Right.
So when we talk about menthol, mint, wintergreen, we're not talking about chew.
Right.
Or regular cigarettes.
Right.
So the item before you is just vaping products.
Right.
Okay.
So you need a motion on all 5?
No.
Well, I think, I
Just on number
have
4.
direction on the
This is-
first 3.
This is workshop, this is direction, you're not really voting, but I think
okay.
what Sean's looking for is an affirmative statement from the council, from each member of the council as to whether they're supportive of
So
item 4.
do you need a motion?
No.
No.
Okay, so maybe the best way, if I can make a suggestion, Madam Mayor, is to go down the line here and just get a
Yes, sir.
comment, yes or no, or elaboration on that.
Councilmember? No?
Yes, all vaping.
No.
Okay, I'm actually going to support it with the caveat that I would like to have the county back in a year, and I want them to show us statistics that youth consumption is reduced as a matter of this. And if it's not, then I'm going to be very disappointed with my position there, because what you're saying is if we do this, then consumption is going to be reduced, and the way that all the graphs are showing, all the statistics are saying that this whole epidemic is skyrocketing. And so I would like to know, in a year, I'd like to have a progress report by the county, and I'd like to know that what we did here tonight had an impact. And if it didn't, I'm very disappointed in what we did tonight. Okay?
Okay. I vote yes, and my comment would be there's a lot of buzz going on about this problem, and there might be other legislation coming in, and so it might affect some sort of a test at the end of it. So I understand what you're saying, but keep in mind that there might be other factors involved with lowering vaping, like more rules and regulations. So I think there's 3 yeses and 2 nos. Okay?
And then the next one that I needed direction on was the creating a 1,000-foot radius buffer around schools and parks, prohibiting tobacco sales totally.
Okay.
I have no problem with that one.
Okay. Jeff? Brian? Yes, yes, and yes. So 4 yeses, 1 no.
All yeses.
All yeses.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry.
Did you
And
think
then-
I thought you said no.
I said I was in favor of the buffer.
All right.
And then the last one was establishing the tobacco retailer licensing program. And as I said during the conversation, I have some concerns about how that would work just
Yeah.
because of our staff size and how we would
Let's-
actually make that.
Okay.
I'm against that at this time because, like you said, it's a staffing issue. And we don't know if any of it's going to work anyway.
Well, yeah, I'm against that as well for the same reason.
Oppose.
Oppose. All 5 oppose.
Okay. So I'll bring back an ordinance as soon as Jeff puts that together. On, yeah. So we'll bring that back as soon as we can.
Thank you. And thank all of you young people for staying up late and being with us tonight. We really appreciate that. We have one more item on our agenda tonight. Item number 12, Code Enforcement Update with Lee Holt, who is our Loomis Code Enforcement Officer. Lee, it's your turn. Thank you for your patience. Oh, what the heck? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why he was hanging out. He was making me nervous over there. Thank you. Oh, my gosh.
You can leave them up on the paper, yeah.
Thank you, Lee.
Good evening, everyone. You don't want to Jeff will step on them down there.
I know.
So good evening. I was just asked to come give an update so you guys kind of know what I'm doing while I'm here. All right, so I just wanted to kind of, I know you guys recently had a potential flag contest. Here's a few, just thought instead of just using the town logo that tonight might be kind of fun to include that.
That's awesome.
So again, thank you and congratulations on your new appointment.
Wow.
So things are still pretty much the same. The biggest thing is that staffing's increased from 1 day to 2 days. I'm still crazy busy. But just building on what we were already establishing with having a team environment and trying to tackle some of the challenges here. All right, so what are some of the major challenges that we do face? Obviously, my most important is always life safety issues, but that comes in many different packages, whether it's work without permits, trailer occupation. Some things might not seem like life safety, but you start looking into it. Even accessory structures with some of the housing issues, people are catching people living in sheds. So it's across the board. So these are some of the ones that we've kind of encountered. And here's one of the shed habitations in the yard. Yes, we had 2 people living in this, and it was a very small shed. But they were very ingenious. If you notice to the right of the door on the left picture, they had electrical with air conditioning and all kinds of stuff. Unpermitted trailer occupation. This has been a big challenge here, especially with some of the fires and, again, the housing situation. We do have an ordinance that allows you to be here up to 2 weeks. So let's say somebody comes to visit for, families coming for the holidays. They want to stay out in their RV. That's fine for 2 weeks, but that's not what we're seeing. So, here's one. Here's another one. So I could go on and on and on, just showing endless pictures. Another thing that we're having more and more issues with is building without permits. People just decide, I'm going to remodel my house. I'm going to add on a new addition. I'm going to put whatever in without any permits. I'm trying to chase this down. Building's doing a great job, but when they aren't coming in for their building permits after they've been given a correction notice or anything else, then it falls into my lap. So this is just sort of a general information of, it can include fences, accessory structures, remodels, just about anything. A lot of people just either aren't aware or don't seem to really care. So trying to work through that and educate people at the same time.
Did you say fences? Sorry.
So,
Like fences in the neighborhood, fences? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So a fence would need to be 6 feet. A lot of times people are building them 7 feet or higher. Could be the type of materials they're using, different types of factors. So again, a lot of times things that people don't have a sense of awareness about, I'm just going to do this. We have some issues. Sometimes it's more of a planning issue, but a lot of times if it's being constructed, it falls under building.
Awesome.
So this is an example. We had... Yes, you can build a regular fence as long as it fits in it's when it exceeds or it's built out of something else. I apologize if I wasn't clear.
Wow, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, well, a lot of times, if it's in the front yard, you have setbacks, you have height and clearance issues, and a lot of people, I want my privacy, I'm gonna build a 7-foot fence. So things like that, so it's...
No building the walls, is that what you're saying?
Well, it can create some issues. So we have a structure. This was an accessory building, but if you notice on the right, there's a part of the building that doesn't look like the rest. Right. That was all without a permit, and that's since been removed. So this is probably the one that most people sort of see or understand. A lot of times it's more subjective. You look at it and go, oh, that doesn't look right, I've even had people like, okay, well, how high can the grass be? Is 3 inches okay? Is 4 inches okay? Some of that stuff isn't delineated exactly what it is, but it's one of those things, sort of like pornography, as the old saying goes, you'll know it when you see it. So I would say I have an issue with this.
Yeah.
Is this on board?
My neighbor.
It's a repurposer.
Repurposer.
Is that you?
All right. So all of these things have, again, it comes back to life safety issues where it's rodent harborage. It could be attractive nuisances where it's sort of inviting for kids to want to come in. There's issues involved in things, which is why we address them. So the bread and butter of what I'm doing, it falls under the nuisance ordinance. And these are some of the main violations that I will have to deal with people. Debris, construction material, attractive nuisances, basically anything that's sort of inviting for kids to want to come in, unfenced pools, open abandoned buildings, construction equipment if it's not secured, things like that. Vegetation is probably, especially coming up in the next few months, going to be a big project. But the bottom line is, if you own property, it is your responsibility and to take care of it and keep it in a good status. So again, my approach is working with the community collaboratively. I always try to work with people right up front. If you don't want to work with me, it gets a little more complicated. A lot of what I do involves other departments, planning, building, sometimes the sheriff, public works, whatever it is, sometimes it's everybody. So again, to sort of touch on why code enforcement's important, I'm sort of the person nobody really wants to deal with, but at the same time, what I do is very, very important. It impacts property values. If you live next door to, say, the house of the repurposer, very nicely put, that lowers your property values. It lowers the neighbor's property values, which then lowers the revenue that comes to the city that supports not just me, but other programs, and it's either a downward spiral or an upward spiral. You either become a community that becomes very inviting and people want to come to. Well, there's a reason it's inviting. You know, not everybody's repurposers or other things that you want to have a certain quality of life. And part of my unofficial title is to make sure that that quality of life is maintained and that the community holds a sense of attractiveness for development, for families and living. And so it's a hard thing to really kind of explain to people. Most people just think I come out to, give them a hard time and tell them what to do, and they don't want to deal with that. And there's many, many layers to this. So here, I'm going to give two examples. This is the first one. This one had multiple cases, which the original complaints went back to 95. Basically, the main issues were they had a trailer moved in without a permit, started occupying it. They were doing wetland destruction. So now they've created an illegal structure, and they were occupying a non-permitted structure. I received a complaint in the spring. So we started enforcement with it, wasn't getting anywhere, tried working with the property owner, so we went to a hearing. We had the hearing in September, and a decision was issued. And now the owner has until the middle of January to comply, which is remove the trailer, cease all occupation, remove all the vehicles, take care of all the complaints, and restore the property back to the condition it should be in. And in the meantime, they also had an assessment placed on it. If they don't comply, we will proceed with an abatement, and we will do it for them and then add extra fees to that, which they can either pay, it could be handled as a lien, however. But we're hoping and trying to work with the property owners to have them comply voluntarily. So this is what the property looked like at one point. Vehicles. Notice the picture on the right, the bathroom is unfinished. Yet there's children on the property. The structure is not secured properly. We have all kinds of other issues. And, oh look, more trailer habitation. It wasn't just the modular that was there. We had multiple trailers with other people living there. This creates a lot of issues. So, this is a second case example, which I think people will recognize. This is something that's been going on with the city that recently came to my attention. It's a dangerous building that had not been abated as agreed, so it was referred to me. It is what would be deemed as a dangerous structure. So we started the enforcement process. Things weren't moving along, so we issued citations. And in the middle of the process, now we have a change of ownership. So now I have to work with the new owners, trying to get them caught up to speed and keep this process moving forward. So we are trying to still get this addressed. In one way or another, it's going to get addressed. So I think most people recognize this building. But we are handling it. We are working with them as best as possible. The ordinance is very clear about the steps and processes we need to follow to give people due process and give them time. And we are working with that, but at the same time imparting the importance of why this needs to get done. And again, if they don't comply, we will help them along in that process. So, just to kind of recap how things work in code enforcement, if I get a complaint, if I can come out and talk with you, I'll try and do it either in person, over the phone. If not, if I see it, or it's just something that I know we're going to go somewhere, send written notice of violation, and I always start with a courtesy unless it's something that has immediate health safety, and I can't give them a courtesy. I gotta escalate it. If you don't get a response from me, I usually give people 30 days, only because in today's society, people are very busy. And sometimes you have financial issues, sometimes you have time issues, sometimes it's, health issues. So I always try to give people 30 days. Still don't hear from you, then you get another notice. This one is called an intent to cite. All right, I tried to talk to you, didn't want to hear what I had to say. This next one is going to be called a citation. And then at that point, 30 days, you'll get a citation. Okay, you didn't want to listen to me, now we're going to start the money game. And it keeps going. If you still don't comply, we're going to look at having a hearing. Then we can look at doing a lien process. And we've also been discussing, given a couple of properties, looking at receiverships or some other legal remedies. So again, some of the influences, economics, sometimes weather, as we know. Right now it's been a little wet, dries out, grass grows, there's different things. You have cultural norms. Sometimes people, if they come from other countries or culturally have certain things that can be a challenge. Property maintenance, awareness of the rules, which we talked about a little bit with building. The big thing I really am trying to slowly move towards in this community is community involvement. The more awareness people have, the more people kind of help self-regulate not only themselves, but some of their neighbors, and really taking care of each other here in town. So again, this kind of just outlines the process, and this is how you reach me. Or if I'm not there, you can always leave a message. I get plenty of them. So here's a couple key notes. I've been managing about 50 plus active cases. I close a few out, a few more come in, but that's kind of been what my average caseload is. And mind you, I'm only here 2 days a week, so it's a pretty heavy caseload for 2 days a week. So far, this year, in 2019, I have recovered over $4,000. To put that in comparison, when I came in, we ran the numbers. The 10 years prior to me coming on board, and I've been here just 1 year now, it was $800 in 10 years. So my job is not to go out and generate revenue for the town. My job is to do my job. If people don't want to pay attention to the notices, I'm having to spend more and more time to help pull them into compliance. That this is one of the ways to offset those expenses.
It's fine.
The hearing costs that we'll be recovering will be over $4,000. And again, really trying to shift the culture here. That code enforcement's been a bit lacking or kind of hit and miss, and people just think I can do what I want. And there's a reason we have laws and ordinances in place to keep some of these, again, that attractiveness that makes Loomis such a great place. I still have over 5,000 outstanding that people have yet to pay. We have a couple big cases that we'll see how these are going to play out, but they're going to take quite a bit of time. But when they're done, I expect that people will notice. So far in 2019, I've opened 103 cases. Those are complaints that people come and file, hey, I have a complaint. In comparison to 2018, we were at 42. So the word is getting out. Hey, code enforcement's here, and I'm going to call them. And so it keeps me busy. So far this year, I've closed 85. And again, in comparison, my short tenure last year, we only closed 17. So keeping myself quite busy and working hard for the community. So any questions?
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Council members.
Madam Mayor?
Please.
Lee, you're doing great work. Really appreciate your attitude. I think code enforcement is a really difficult thing. You know, there was some time where we didn't have hardly any code enforcement presence. So I'm really grateful for the work you're doing. The numbers support that. So much so where I think it's important for council going into 2020 to consider putting more money aside for this. I mean, 100 open cases is overwhelming, and 2 days a week is 2 days more than we had 3 years ago a week. But we've got a long list of things, and those are just things that are reported and opened. I think everyone in this room probably has something that they've got their eye on or two throughout the community that they would like to see improved. And so I'd like to talk more about that as we go into 2020, getting more, expanding the code enforcement services. There's a few other things that I'd like to concentrate on. And first of all, we've talked about doing a wholesale code update. You were going to bring some recommendations to us on how to improve and strengthen your position with our codes. So what's the status on that? We've talked about that quite a bit, but there are some things that you do where you come to us and say, well, just based on the way that our codes are written, I'm toothless, and we want to give you teeth in your job. So where are we with all of those efforts?
Well, I mean, with 100 new cases in a year and doing 2 days a week, there's not a lot of time for her to spread, to do that. Working with the town attorney's office, though, and figuring out how we can do that, we'll get started on that next year. We, frankly, just haven't had time.
Yeah, I understand. So with respect to that, I think we just need to consider dedicating more funds to that department. Second, I think we should consider a rental housing program, whereas, there are homes out there in the community that, I pass by one every day. It literally has just tarps over the roof, and there's someone renting that house, right? And it just, it's a major health and safety issue. We don't have any program that goes out and does rental inspections, and that's quite an effort, and that would probably require more manpower or woman power than we have. But there are people sitting in blight and squalor right now in 2019 in Loomis, and that's just unacceptable. Most cities have a rental housing program, and we ought to consider putting one together. And that's more than just a 1 month or 2 month conversation. That really is a longer term conversation that I think this council should consider. But that's just, in this day and age, if we see that happening and we turn a blind eye to that, then we're culpable. And that's just unacceptable in this modern age and in this town. So that's not a reflection on you. You're doing everything that we're asking you to do, and above and beyond that. So thank you. But some of those responsibilities come back to council and how we delegate resources. So keep up the great work, Lee. I'm very proud of all you're doing, and to be continued.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
I do want to add that the town manager has done a great job, and he and I have had many conversations about, hey, if we know about it, there is a sense of liability, how are we going to proceed? As society grows and changes, and as a small town starts having more big city issues, some of those same issues, like the housing inspection program, that's something, if you mentioned that 2 years ago, people probably wouldn't even think about that. So part of it is just growth and growing and the world impacting Loomis. The town manager's been doing a very good job when I do bring things to him. We have talked about looking at revising some of the ordinances. Some of these things they do take time. And part of it is also sitting with it a little bit and really, looking around and seeing how do we want this to be crafted, because we don't want to jump into something and realize, oh, we overlooked this component or this piece. So really having it be very customized to the town and its needs and where its growth will be.
I think my comments were more about not a criticism of what we're not doing, but we can always do better. All right, and if you look at from the time that you started and where you picked up from, I think we've made a ton of progress. Right. Mm-hmm. Again, we can always do more, and that's just, I think, the point that I'm trying to make. And so. I'm again proud of all the things that you're doing, and there are some hard cases too. I mean, code enforcement requires a lot of time and energy on just a few cases, right? And you're saying we've got over 100 open. So these are really time-consuming tasks that I think the council needs to look within and say, what are our priorities? How serious are we about this? Are we? Is it just kind of one of those things we want to do 2 days a week, or do we want something that's more robust? And so my position is to take this more seriously.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Anything else?
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words.
Okay. All right, let's open it up for public comment.
Hi, Sue Dobies, 5570 Arcadia Avenue. I would just want to say that I'm absolutely thrilled that you have increased Lee's hours. I lived next door to some people that were quite a problem for many years, all kinds of problems. And it was actually, I think, Sean, when you came, I was telling Sean about some of the problems, and he was instrumental in helping that move along, and thank goodness that's all been taken care of, and it's wonderful that it's in the past. I did have a question for Lee. I know that you had mentioned that the fences can be 6 feet. If, let's say, my neighbor wants to build a 7-foot fence and asks me how would I feel about that, and I say, well, that'd be fine, is it okay if the two neighbors agree upon that?
No, you're still going to need to go through planning. If it's a 7-foot fence, it's going to either go through design review, or planning will work with whoever the parties are to make sure that it's in compliance and that it's what we would deem as legalized, so that somewhere down the road the house sells or somebody else, oh, I don't like that. It was approved. It is as it is. So there's a process in place to help make sure that these things are done right. Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment?
Can I just add one comment on that? I'm not intimately familiar with your fence ordinances, but as a general statement, I would not want people to believe that neighbors can agree to deviate from things like fence heights, setback requirements. You can't have an agreement between the parties to violate some town standard on height, setback, other critical pieces. There are some exceptions, 0 lot line agreements and various other things that can be done. But
So best advice is to give the town a call before you do anything.
Yes.
My neighbor, Pam Blake, my neighbor and I, we put in a code enforcement complaint of a neighbor behind us that did a side fence. And we were dealing with a fella, he came out, once, but I was talking to the neighbor and we kind of, dropped it. But the neighbor behind me, what she did with all of her brothers was on the side fence, she built up 2 feet of cement and then put a 6-foot fence on top of the 2 feet of cement. And she mentioned to my next door neighbor that she was going to do the same thing with the back fence, which would be my fence and his fence, going across. So nothing ever came to that. So I guess I'll talk to my neighbor again and revisit that, because that happened when I was still working. So I've been retired for about 3 years. So do I need to submit something new or send an email to give you the address to look back into that? Okay. I know. They were out there working like mad and did the cement 2 feet up and that, and I'm thinking like, whoa. So, okay.
Thank you, Pam. Anybody else? Nobody else? All right. Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back. I just want to thank you, Lee, for a really very informative presentation. I am so thrilled to quote another member of our audience here tonight of the amount of work that you've been able to do, and I just, it's amazing. Even though I know the $4,000 isn't much to think about, it's the actual actions that have taken place and things that are being cleaned up that are what's most important to our town, and safety and all that. So thank you so much, and thank you. So we'll close that up for that item, and we're going to go to council committee reports. You want to start with you, Councilmember Baker?
Nothing really to report from PCTPA. I would just encourage everybody to go to their Facebook page or Twitter, depending on which social media platform you use. They send a lot of things out about local things that are going on, projects, things that have to do with transit, all those different things. So as we move forward with learning about transit stuff, it's a good opportunity for people to see the information as it comes out, and a good way to kind of interact with the staff. So.
SACOG report. Let's see, Rena, the SACOG board last month approved a RENA formula for the RENA process. If you have any curiosity of what that means, let me know. That's it for me.
Anybody else?
I have nothing at this time.
No, and I don't either. So we are going to adjourn our meeting. Nope. Not till next time.
January.
Yeah, next time. All right, so let's go ahead and adjourn, and we're almost at 10 o'clock. Thank you all so much for staying up so late tonight. Thank you.